Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 3rd of May of 2025. Today we have lots of very interesting updates and today we have lots of strange and probably crazy updates that we will discuss in details. First, let's talk about Zelensky, because today he made very important statement. He confirmed and he rejected that the ceasefire that was proposed by the Russian Federation by Putin. Ukraine cannot guarantee other countries the safety of their representatives during trips to Moscow for the parade. Zelensky said, "We do not recommend you to visit the Russian Federation from a safety point of view, and if you do not ask us. It is your personal decision." Ukrainian publications quote him as a saying. So this is a very important piece of news because we see that now the situation is that like Western countries, Ukrainian resources, Western resources are trying to force us to think that during the May's holidays, Ukraine is going to probably carry out full-scale attack with drones and missiles all over the entire territory of the Russian Federation. And as for now, there are two targets. The Ukrainians could attack the territory of the Red Square, where a lot of leaders from different countries are going to come. We are talking about Xi Jinping, about Modi, about the president of the Russian Federation, about the president of Belarus, about the president of Venezuela, North Korea, and many other people we understand that the Western countries don't like. And we see everything, and we see that Ukrainians are planning this attack. And for example, during the previous 48 hours, the Ukrainians carried out several attempts to attack with missiles and drones the southern part of the Russian Federation. We have already covered this situation during the previous video. For example, according to the Ministry of Defense, yesterday the Russians managed to bring down 121 drones above the territory of Crimea and the southern part of the Russian Federation and the Black Sea. As for the 3rd of May, we have information that the Russians managed to bring down another 170 drones, 96 over Crimea, 47 over the Krasnodar region. So we see that Ukrainians are intensifying and they're trying to force us to think that the Crimean Bridge and the southern part of Russia with the Russian fleet is the primary target for the armed forces of Ukraine and for Ukrainians. And furthermore, several days ago on the 30th of April, the Ukrainians created and published this video where we can see how the preparation were ongoing, let's say, to carry out a special operation against the Crimean Bridge. So the Ukrainians are trying to force us and to force the world to think, and of course the Russian Federation itself, that they are going to attack not just like Russia during the 9th of May, they're going to destroy the bridge, and probably they will attack in the direction of the Red Square with the purpose to break the Russian plans regarding this, let's say, meeting, regarding the visit of Xi Jinping and Modi and many other leaders. And furthermore, today we got very interesting situation in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Novorossiysk. By the way, Novorossiysk is very important settlement. This is the final, let's say, base of Russian fleet in the Black Sea, where the Russians can feel themselves more or less safe. The Ukrainians and there is the entire fleet of the Russian Federation is there. So obviously, if Ukrainians are able to destroy one ship, obviously they will be able to destroy many ships. And today we got very important video that was published by the Ukrainians. This is the video. And according to Ukrainian sources in this video, we can see how the Ukrainians using the Navy drone managed to bring down Russian 330 fighter. Obviously, this is historical, let's say, event, and obviously this event will go into ages. The Ukrainians, as a result of use of Navy drone, managed to bring down Russian fighter that cost millions of dollars. So this is another way how Ukrainians are trying to force us to think that this is exactly what is going to happen. And I thought like this, obviously, until this evening. And probably several hours before I started making this video, several events were published, and I noted that people didn't pay enough of attention to these events, but I paid to these events lots of attention, and I came to conclusion that something is wrong with this. And obviously, even if the Ukrainians are planning to carry out massive missile or drone strike all over the entire territory of the Russian Russian Federation, over Crimean Bridge, or over Damascus, the capital of the Russian Federation, obviously this is going to be a secondary attack, or the attack which main purpose is to distract our attention. Distract attention of the Russian authorities, of Russian air defense systems, and I believe that Ukrainians, and not just Ukrainians but the Western countries, at least until the beginning of the 3rd of May, were planning and were preparing another attack that should be the primary attack. The primary attack which task is target Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, and probably many other leaders of these, let's say, black, that Western countries doesn't look like. So what I'm talking about today, we got very important update, and this update is coming from the state of Slovakia and from the state of Serbia. Today we got report about Vučić, that he changed his plan and he was not going to visit Moscow anymore, and we got some articles about this, and this is the first, let's say, summarized statement of today. Fico and Vučić, who had planned to come to the parade in Moscow, fell ill. This is the most important update you need to understand during the previous 24 hours, during the previous maybe week. Not the bringing down of Su-30 in the Black Sea, not Ukraine's attempts to attack deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation, not the Zelensky rejected peace proposal. Obviously, this is very important updates, but this piece of news is the most important one. First of all, later we got additional article published by the Russian resources. Let's discuss this in detail. The president of Serbia was hospitalized at the Military Medical Academy in Belgrade. Vučić suddenly felt unwell during his visit to the United States and returned to Serbia, cancelling all scheduled meetings. The current condition of the Serbian leader is unknown. Earlier, Vučić's visit to Moscow for the Victory Day celebration was announced. And once again, according to information we have, Vučić, before he felt himself bad, visited the United States of America, where he had some meetings with representatives, most likely of the United States. But who knows who else he visited, who he had meeting with. And I'll remind you that several days ago we got very important article, very important video that was published with Tulsi Gabbard, the director of the National Intelligence. She said that US has funded bioweapons research programs that in some cases led to pandemics and other infections in different countries. But what we're working on now with many different statements, but the most important is that she said that US had funded bioweapons research programs that in some cases led to pandemics and other infections in different countries. So we see that after Vučić visited the United States of America, he was planning to return back, maybe, and Fico as well, because he fell sick as well. He was planning first to return back, let's say, to Serbia, and after he came back to Serbia, probably in several days, let's say in 5 days, he was planning to move to Moscow. Now let's talk about the other important things, another important, let's say, term, and other important words as incubation period. Imagine yourself, I'm not sure what is happening with him right now, but some sources are saying that he felt himself very bad and he was connected to some devices that support his health and support his life. Currently we have these updates, I believe you saw them in the news and different channels. But imagine yourself if he had incubation period, not like 1 day after the visit of the United States of America, but let's say in 5 days. And let's say if all the symptoms and all these things that is happening right now start happening him on the 9th of May during his visit in Moscow, when he most likely would have meeting with the president of the Russian Federation, with the leader of China, with the leader of India, and with the leader of North Korea, and many other leaders. I believe that there are very high chances that every single person he could meet with during the 9th of May could get the same diseaser and could get the same illness, and nobody knows what could happen then with them. So this is the main idea I'll try to tell you. I'm not saying that this is exactly what is happening right now or what was planned by the Western countries, let's say, with the Russian Federation and with the 9th of May parade. I'm not sure about this. This is 100% speculation and projection of some probably theory what might happen. But one thing, I'm just trying to tell you one thing, that the thing that Ukrainians are trying to attack deep inside the territory of the Russian Federation with missiles and drones, and they're trying to show us and to present this like something huge, is obviously attempt to distract our attention. Obviously, Ukrainians are preparing another strike, much more probably not like interesting, much more specific, much more concentrated, and but much smaller than just hundreds of missiles that can be sent deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation. And this situation with Vucic probably was one of the plan or one of the attempts. Who knows? Anyway, sooner or later we will understand what is going to happen. But obviously, and you need to understand this, that the Russian authorities understand the situation, everything that we have just discussed. And now they have few options: either to start checking every single leader that is going to come to Russia for all these diseases and for all these illnesses and for all kind of viruses, or they're gonna have to cancel this meeting, because nobody knows who else can be probably get this virus or something like this, like Vucic and Fico had right before the beginning of this, let's say, parade and situation on the 9th of May on the territory of Moscow. Let's wait and see. Now let's talk about the situation on the ground, and we have a lot of very important updates. The Russians continue their offensive operation despite the rejection from the Ukrainian side, despite the holidays in May that are going to happen very soon. The Russians continue their offensive. As for the South Donetsk direction, for the first time, probably for the previous 2 or 3 weeks or months, we have received at least something. And in this video that was published by the Ukrainian side, we can see how the Russians, using their own feet without vehicles, were moving through the fields in the direction of the settlement of Volne Polya, in the direction of the settlement by the name of Privilne. So the Russians were advancing, and when the Russians took under control additional position, the Ukrainians began bombing and attacking them. In this video, we could see how the Ukrainians were bombing the Russians exactly along this tree line. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map in Russian favor, and this is the situation as for the end of the 3rd of May of 2025. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Bogatyr direction. The Russians continue their offensive operation, and yesterday we got report that the Russians managed to answer the southern part, and this information was provided by different neutral mappers but without any proof, as you can see. As for the end of the 3rd of May, we got first video that was published by the Ukrainians, and in this video we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians in the fields, and the most important, in the most southeastern part of the settlement of Bogatyr. This is exactly a moment. Ukrainians attacked the Russian soldier exactly in this point. Based on this video that was published by Ukrainians, we have adjusted the map and we have colored at least the most southeastern part of the settlement. Most likely the Russians currently are fighting for the central, let's say, Miro Street, but we don't have proofs, and so we are not adjusting the map. But we see that from the other side, the Ukrainians are trying to stick as close as possible to the northern and the northwestern parts of the settlement, with the purpose, when time comes, when Zelenskyy orders, they need to be sure that they can get in the direction of Alexeyevka as soon as possible and further in the northwestern direction along the river in the direction of Novoukrainka and Odradne. So Ukrainians are trying to stick to this evacuation routes without, let's say, concentrating their forces in the southeastern part. They're just waiting for this order to retreat, and obviously this order is going to come very soon. Now let's move further. As for the Dnipro direction or Novopavlovka direction, as you can see during the previous 24 hours, we got the highest number of updates exactly from this area. First of all, pro-Ukrainian sources confirmed Russian progress on the ground to the north of Avdiivka. We haven't adjusted anything because several neutral mappers reported about this progress several months ago. But pro-Ukrainian sources have adjusted their maps just today. So these fields were taken by the Ukrainians. Furthermore, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians were trying to improve their positions and to bring additional forces to the line of combat contact with the purpose to attack the settlement of Novotroivska from the southeast. Furthermore, according to several mappers, several sources, the Russians were attacking the settlement of Novotroivska from the northeast and from the east. So the Russians began their major offensive operation in the direction of the settlement, but as for the end of the 3rd of May, we haven't received even a single update that can confirm, let's say, Russian progress on the ground. In this video, we can see this attack. We can see lots of vehicles, lots of tanks that were covered with additional armor that were heading towards the settlement of Troitska under fire of the 414th, let's see, brigade of drones of the armored force Ceasefire and Ptahi Madyara. Lots of vehicles and, let's say, tanks were damaged and destroyed by the Ukrainians. And as for now, we know for sure that the Russians managed to reach the settlement of Bogdanovka, but we don't have any proofs that the Russians managed to move through the village of Bogdanovka and to get the southern part of Troitska. Anyway, there are very heavy clashes. We see that the Russians are trying to establish complete control over the Dnipro, over the Donetsk region, and to get to the border and to the territory of the Dnipro region. And obviously this is going to happen, even if this happens not before the 9th of May. Obviously this is going to happen during the months of May and during the next several weeks. Very heavy clashes currently are taking place between the settlements of Kotlarovka, Nadeevka, Novosergeyevka, Novonikolaevka, Muravka, and Novoalexandriivka. We have adjusted the map, and telling the truth, right before we started making this video, pro-Russian sources or pro-Ukrainian sources published the video where we could see Russian soldiers on the territory of Kotlarovka. So most likely tomorrow we will adjust the village of Kotlarovka, or at least some part of this settlement, in Russian favor. But as for now, we see that the Russians are just advancing. The same story. The Russians are trying to get to the border with the Dnipro region, and we see that the Russians are about to do this. Furthermore, today several pro-Russian resources reported that the armored forces of the Russian Federation entered the eastern part of the settlement of Novosergeyevka, which is already a settlement that is located along the border with Dnipro region. So the Russians are shortening the distance. They're getting closer and closer, and we see that Ukrainians can't stabilize the situation, and most likely the Russians will be able to establish complete control over this territory in the very near future. Furthermore, today several pro-Russian resources reported that the settlement of Novoalexandriivka came in Russian hands. So there are just several square kilometers and kilometers left before the Russians enter Dnipro region, which obviously can take place before the 9th of May. As for the Pokrovsk direction, we still haven't received anything that can confirm Russian control over the southern part of the city. I'll remind you that several days ago, Ukrainian sources published videos where they were bombing and attacking Russian units on the territory of the southern part of the city. As for now, we still haven't received additional details. And for example, when talking about pro-Ukrainian sources, they also haven't adjusted the map. Deep State showing us today that the Russians just managed to establish control over the settlement of Shevchenka. The territory between the settlement of Shevchenka and the settlement of Pokrovsk, either in the gray zone or in contested areas. So nothing from their side that can confirm Russian progress or that the Russians managed to enter the city. As for the N32 road or N32 direction, today we have lots of icons, as you can see. The Russians resumed their attempts to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Mirolubovka. From this area, during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of important updates. First of all, let's take a look at this video. The Russians, when they entered the settlement of Mirolubovka and when the Russians managed to dig in deeper, the Russians began checking and testing and searching for Ukrainian positions in this region. They're trying to find Ukrainian FPV drone positions. The Russians are trying to destroy Ukrainian temporary deployment points, strongholds, and so on, basically to ease and to reduce the territory to ruins and to ease the progress and the movements on the ground of the Russian troopers that are going to attack in the very near future. As for the pocket, as for this N32 part, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received almost anything. The Russians, according to information we have, managed to improve their positions to the north of the settlement of Berezovka. They took under control the East Tree line. By the end of the 3rd of May, the Russians established control over something like this, according to several reliable pro-Russian resources. Furthermore, the Russians improved their positions, and the Russians almost answered the northwestern part of Alexandria Alexandropol. As for this update, as you can see, this information was provided by pro-Ukrainian sources. The only interesting thing about pro-Ukrainian mappers is they still reject that the Russians managed to break through Ukrainian defense and to enter Novolenivka, despite the fact that yesterday we got hundreds of episodes and hundreds of seconds and probably tens of minutes that confirm Russian presence on the ground, not just in the village of Novolenivka, but that the Russians managed to take under control several strongholds in the same direction. Ukrainians now reject this information. As for the Kliban-Bykska direction, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their positions in the most southern part, and the Russians managed to shorten the distance to the village of Romanovka. As for the northern part of this pocket, we have lots of videos how the Russians were bombing and destroying Ukrainian strongholds, positions, ammo depots with the purpose to reduce Ukrainian capabilities in this pocket, and obviously the Russians managed to do this. As for the Chasiv Yar direction, during the previous 24 hours, we got some changes on the ground in this pocket along the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal. The Russians improved their positions and took under control several strongholds to the north of the city of Donetsk, and the Russians took under control several strongholds and trenches to the south of Avdiivka. As for the Chasiv Yar direction itself, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special. The only important update we have is that the Ukrainians are very angry, those who are on the ground, because the Ukrainians, since the beginning of the special military operation, still haven't managed to establish additional nets, secure nets on the roads between all these settlements. The Ukrainians are saying that Russian FPVs have already hit Ukraine armored personnel carrier in Konstants on the way to Drushkovka. So the Russians established complete FPV drone control over this territory, and the Ukrainians, they know that there is a situation with Russian fiber optic drones, and the Ukrainians didn't do anything with this area. They didn't improve their defense, they didn't establish any nets, and now they're complaining that this is a very bad situation. As for the Sivas direction, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions on the eastern outskirts of the settlement of Grigorovka. Very important video, a very important update. The Russians continue offensive, and we see that with this, Russians most likely will be able to take under control the village of Grigorovka in the first half of May. As for the Liman direction, today we got lots of videos from the settlement of Tarskoye. I'll remind you that during the previous days and during the previous months, the map in this area has been changed for several times, and sometimes we got videos when Russians answer the territory, then we got videos that Ukrainians control this area. And as for the end of the 3rd of May, Ukrainian sources published this video where we can see how they were bombing and attacking the northern part of the settlement of Tarskoye, and we are talking about these farms. This video that was published by the Ukrainians confirms Russian presence and strong control over this territory. Anyway, we don't know for sure whether the Russians control this entire northeastern part. According to geolocations, they do, but when talking about strong control, now we have no doubts that the Russians control these farms and that the Russians continue advancing. So the battle for Tarskoye obviously has begun. As for the central and as for the northern Kupiansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special. As for the Kharkiv, the Russians were bombing and attacking the settlement during the previous 24 hours. As for the Sumy direction, currently the Russians are concentrated on the settlement of Miropolye. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of videos how the Russians were bombing exactly this pocket, and most likely the Russians are preparing themselves to begin offensive operation in this area with the purpose to cut this salient, to cut this pocket, but as you can see, as for now, without any changes on the ground. And most likely before the beginning or before the end of the 9th of May, we are not going to see lots of changes on the ground. We are going to see just several directions where the Russians are going to be very active, like South Donetsk, Pokrovsk, Konstantinovka. But as for the rest of the territories, the Russians most likely will try to regroup themselves to bring additional forces, and after the end of the holidays, the Russians will continue. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.